The task of pulling...
All four. Without Walls tonight, the media show returns to examine the artistic legacy of 13 years of Conservative rule.
The British miracle didn't happen by accident. The ladies not for turning.
I do not believe we will see her light again.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
13 years ago, Mrs. Thatcher arrived in Downing Street with the same promise as St Francis of Assisi. Now, the stage is set for an election on April the 9th. And although we don't know who the next government is going to be, it's clear that the arts in Britain won't be high on the agenda. Yet during the 80s, our cultural life was transformed by the Conservative government. As Mrs. Thatcher's very personal vision of Britain became a reality, it affected every aspect of our culture. Tonight, in a special edition of the media show, we look at how museums became shops, supermarkets became barns, and the British musical became a microcosm of the Thatcher dream come true.
It was a decade that was about escapism, about entertainment, about getting away from reality, more than plunging into reality, and therefore the musical became the epitome of that.
Britain would be the greatest, most successful economic power in the world if everything British was as successful as musicals. It did exactly the Thatcherite theory.
I remember the very first lunch we had, that you said to me, the thing that always stuck in the back of my head, you said, Hal Prince had told you that a show has got to look as good as it sounds.
Everybody rise in the arts! Rising at the master's arts! Everybody rise in the master of the house!
We didn't know. I mean, we were frightened shitless most of the time getting the shows on, you know, and we were so relieved. And I remember the opening night in this theatre, at the interval, we turned out to be a drunk in the circle, said, rubbish. And he and I thought we had a catastrophe on our hands, and we were white in the interval. The audience was great on the opening night by the end, but at the interval you could see this was a strange world. Scare. We had a bomb scare, and people thought we'd done it for publicity, and I said if we'd done it for publicity we'd have had cameras out front.
Hang on to your seats tonight. Here come the cats.
I think the clever thing about these shows is that they're not in the least bit parochial in the way that most kinds of theatre are, so that you have no sense watching these shows that they are British. They don't tell you anything about the British condition. They're not like so many straight plays examining post-imperial decline or any of that kind of thing. You know, Cats is about cats, Starlight Express is a lot of fellas scooting around on roller skates, Les Miserables is the great social novel of all time, and Phantom is some creepy guy living in the basement who fancies the big girl on stage. Well, those are things that can be understood in any kind of culture around the world. And you could say that the clever thing about the way they're sold is that you're not aware of the flag that's flying on top of them.
We sort of lucked on the scene with our shows at a time when the world shrank.
Pushkin Street, Moscow. Cats hits its 15th city.
Phantom of the Opera premiered in Melbourne last night.
Och det råkar vi göra samtidigt som The Phantom of the Opera har premiär här i Stockholm.
Britain's latest arrival on Broadway is going to do very nicely indeed.
Lots of people saw these shows in either London or New York and wanted to see something of the same standard, which is the reason we both have set up offices and in various parts of the world.
Cameron's made actually a very, very good point. Standard, you see, in the old days, the productions, frankly, that you probably saw in Melbourne or Sydney, say, just off the top of my head, would have been pretty pale imitations of what the original was. We found, and we set out, particularly with Cats, and it's been the same, I think, with Cameron's shows and my shows, both together and separately. We've absolutely built it on the fact that the quality of the productions that we have around the world has got to be up to the standard of the originals, because people these days will not accept it.
And it has the reliability of McDonald's. You know that if you go anywhere, if you go into the McDonald's in Ljubljana, or the McDonald's in Addis Ababa, that a sausage and egg McMuffin is going to taste exactly the same.
International success isn't the only thing that Mr. Mackintosh shares with Mr. MacDonald. They're both also highly skilled in those other arts of the 80s, marketing and design. In the 70s, you'd have emerged from this theatre with a warm glow. Now you'd probably come out clutching a keyring, a coffee mug and a compact disc.
Cameron Mackintosh is without exception, the best marketer of material anywhere in the world. He understands logo, image. He understands the language of advertisers.
The first one that really, I think, did come through was Cats, which is a remarkable piece of work. And I remember the first time, I remember the discussion absolutely vividly in your office, and we both said to each other, we asked if everybody would go out of the room for a moment, and we had Trevor Nunn with us, and we both said, we're worried that this is actually too arty and too sophisticated for a popular musical. And then we suddenly realised, well, hell, we are dealing with T.S. Eliot. It's got the dance figures in the eyes, it says it all. We were worried, but it was, in hindsight, marvellous.
It was the most arresting poster, but because it was so off the wall and different, you know, we just had to persuade ourselves that this was the right risk to take.
The Cats logo or the Les Miserables logo are, in some respects, as familiar now as the Coca-Cola emblem. You know, musicals never had logos before. You don't think of West Side Story and see a logo. You don't think of Oklahoma and see a logo. You think of them and you hum a tune. Whereas the first thing you think about of Les Miserables is that little urchin girl who has sold a zillion T-shirts and mugs and all kinds of other paraphernalia.
There is a castle on a cloud. I like to go there in my sleep. Aren't any floors for me to sweep?
One essence of Thatcherism was that everything became a commodity, and the criterion for success was its sellability and its popularity, rather than what it contributed as a public service. Well, obviously the musical is the theatrical epitome of that. The musical is the ultimate sellable theatrical product.
This was a terrific show. I cried.
Brilliant. Excellent. Wonderful.
You could go along to English first nights in the 1980s and they were full of all the most terrible people you'd ever want to be sitting surrounded by. Yet you got a kind of delicious frisson at the whole atmosphere of this thing, that there was so much money, you know, millions of pounds riding on a piece of piffle, and the piece of piffle had been expanded like some massive contrick. It had been inflated into this glossy, shining bauble. And the very vulgarity of these shows did, I think, sum up the mood of the 1980s far more than any other art form.